Well, it's the fuel pressure regulator I just picked up, which is cool. It's what I did was, I also marked it so you could see on there. I don't know if you could barely see this damn thing. It's, it's 1 pound, 2 pounds, or 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. Excuse me, it actually goes from that down to a half a pound, all the way down there. That's a half a pound. 1 pound, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, up to 5.5 pounds. So 5 pounds is an ideal setting for the Holley 500 CFM 2-barrel carb. It's not a Holley 850 double pumper or something like that. The stock fuel pumps, when they're brand new, they might put out about, 8-9 pounds, which is quite a bit. So I did change the fuel pump. I don't think this is going to help me too much, but there's another advantage to using this. If you install an electric fuel pump in way back towards the back near the gas tank, and you leave the mechanical fuel pump, sometimes it can help you out, especially like if the car sits for a couple months or a month, or sometimes in the wintertime, I don't know, maybe you need some fuel pushed through the line to get to the mechanical fuel pump, because the mechanical fuel pump is kind of like it's pulling on one side and putting pressure on the other side. So sometimes when it pulls, if there's air in the lines, if you got that electric fuel pump, you don't need to use the electric all the time. You can just flip it on whenever you need it. But then if you're using an electric fuel pump, even if you're using a low pressure electric fuel pump, it might be 8, 9, more than 8, actually 9, 10, 12 pounds, which is too much for a carb, so you definitely need this anyway, especially this carb. So I put it on with, the Teflon tape. So if you're screwing it in this way, clockwise, you wrap the tape that way. The Teflon tape actually does two different things. I know there was an argument about Teflon tape, it does one or the other. Actually, it does both. It seals it to threads, and it also acts like a lubricant, so you can tighten them down more. Maybe you don't need to use this because it's a brass fitting, but it's getting used on there anyway. So we're going to install this, and here comes Panda Cat. See him? I've been giving him carbon C60. He's getting some carbon C60 right now, little booger. Hey, buddy, what are you doing, huh? Big Ben? You got a big dose of it yesterday. You're being friendly? This guy. I can't pet him, but I like this cat. You're a good guy, buddy. Oh, you're really coming close, aren't you? Oh, I got you zoomed in, but anyway. Well, that's perfectly chicken with carbon C60 in there, so. Eat up, buddy. Hopefully, freaking, he'll be a long-lived cat too. Anyway, he's got a boo-boo on the bottom of his, under his throat there, and I figured, I don't know what the hell that came from. I says, you're getting a carbon C60 treatment too, man. Every day. Okay, so it's installed, and you notice that it would have been resting against the heater hose again, and I was thinking rubber, even though it's a rubber line. I put another piece of insulation on the heater hose in case the fuel line gets hot from that, because it's just touching there a little bit. That might be okay. I don't know, but I don't know if this is going to improve it or not. The other thing I want to mention is, I know some people, I know some laws in some states talk about serrated edge knives, but if you go cut a rubber hose, you can make a much cleaner cut with a serrated edge more quickly than you can with the straight edge. It cuts like butter. Same with cutting these zip ties. If they're hard to cut with the straight, plain edge versus the serrated edge. People don't realize that the serrated edge is a valuable tool, but especially with plastic and rubber and stuff, even rope sometimes. The other side of it is, if I change out the line and from down here, from the fuel pump down there. I'm going to make a bracket right up here using these existing holes, probably these two and this one, coming up this way, that'll hold the line coming up from there and straight into there, with a braided rubber line that uses clamps sort of like this, except they're higher pressure. I'm not going to use the AN fittings, which are actually called Army Navy fittings. That's an AN fitting there, but it's just got a rubber hose on it. It doesn't need to have that because it's just a, it's a low pressure system. You could run rubber line that far, but it'd be better to have at least a braided line. So if I do that, but I did notice that what felt hot to touch was not the fuel line itself. It was the fuel pump, and that's what I've been hearing is a lot of times the problem. And I was looking online to see if there is a phenolic resin, maybe like an 1/8 inch spacer that you could put by the fuel pump between that and the engine block. Nobody makes one. I heard they used to make them a million years ago. I mean, that would freaking solve the problem probably too. And one other thing I'm going to show you. And if I cut off that steel fuel line down there, and I'm going to put a rubber braided steel line onto it. When you cut those tubes, the fuel line tube, what you want to use is a mini pipe cutter. You can see this has got a little wheel on there, and that fits around. I guess you can say this is the tube. The tube would fit in here like this, and you would just keep tightening down this wheel and keep turning and turning and turning, where this would be spinning, and this little wheel cuts the tube nice and even. Yeah, you might be able to get it straight with a hacksaw if you're real careful, but that thing works better, This thing's good for tight spaces too. Then, what you do is use this flaring tool. This, like you have this, would be clamped in there. This would be like a steel pipe. I know this is metric, but 8mm is a 5/16, close enough. I mean, I'm not doing brake work with this. It's just going to be a fuel line. And you put the line up through here, and this, you have to take one of these ends off, and slide it over that. This goes over that, and the line is up through here clamped. Then you take this end, and you screw it down on this right here. Like that. And then this is the line is up through here, and this is like, you have to slide this over, then you just press down, you screw this down and into the line, that right there, and it makes your flare. So, I'll just pull the line off, cut it with the mini pipe cutter, make the flare, and I'll put the braided stainless steel rubber, it's rubber on the inside, with better clamps than this. I'll probably use 2 clamps on each end and make a bracket. I think the problem really is the fuel pump itself, maybe, but we'll see when I get the phenolic resin spacer for the carburetor. This could freaking do it though. I don't know. I'm going to do still one step at a time. I'm not going to do everything at once, because sometimes, that's a shitload of work for what? I mean, I could put an electric fuel pump on it, return fuel line, an electric fuel pump away in the back. I'm just doing, the most common shit first and see what happens. But, I know every detail on how to get rid of this problem. But what I was never aware of before was that I know they made ethanol gas, and I know it's crappier and it doesn't last as long and it doesn't have as much power per gallon and all this garbage, and it tracks water, but I didn't know that it boils at a much lower temperature, and that is why these old cars are having problems now. They used to sometimes have problems, but this Chevy wouldn't have a problem unless you're talking about running it through the desert or something like that and stopping it for half an hour. But even in hot weather, most of the time it wouldn't have a problem. It's the gasoline. And There's ways around it. We'll figure it out. If there's a return fuel line, and even with the mechanical pump, that will keep the cool fuel flowing. So when you start the car, the mechanical fuel pump will push out all the bubbles and air to the refuel to the return line in the tank. That actually would freaking solve it, but that's more work. I have to do another line going all the way back there. I don't feel like doing all that crap, you know. But anyway, I think I'm going to have this straightened out pretty soon. But you know, just this is a very good thing to run on off-road vehicles too. I have one on which I don't really use this off-road, but I used to. I have one on here. If you're running a carburetor, this is a Toyota carburetor on a Suzuki. It's a 2.5 pounds. So that'll help you from getting flooded out. And similarly, the Holley 2-barrel only needs 5 pounds on that one. So, you know, I mean, it's not a Holley 850 double pumper, okay? Not running a, 396, 427, 454 big block. It's like a freaking 180 horse freaking 350 or something. I don't know what the hell this thing puts out, not much. But, yeah, I mean, that might help. So, just figured I'd tell you some tips there. The, the flaring tool, the mini pipe cutter. It's good to have a serrated edge knife. I just hope in your state they don't give you a hard time about it, because I use this serrated edge knife all the time for cutting these zip ties, cutting hoses, stripping wires. I mean, what's the matter with these people, man? I mean, God, everything could be a weapon if they're gonna freaking get that stupid about it. I mean, a car part could be a weapon. I mean, I could take that carburetor off the engine and say that's a weapon. I mean, what's the matter with these people? Freaking knuckleheads, man. It's movies, drama. And, this, for all I know, maybe I fixed it with this. I don't know. I don't think so, though. But that might improve, like, any kind of issue where you might get some kind of flooding or something. Say the car's hot in traffic and it's building up more pressure in the lines. The mechanical fuel pump, maybe a brand new, this is a brand new mechanical fuel pump, maybe it's putting out 9 pounds, maybe it's putting out 9.5, 10 pounds, I don't know. And then if you're in traffic, it might be, maybe there's more pressure past, because the fuel is getting hot, maybe it's putting out 11 pounds. And actually, these Holley 2-barrels, I know it's a Barry Grant Demon, but it's really a Holley 2-barrel. Same damn thing, basically. It's the same thing. You can buy every Holley part for this thing. It's exactly the same. I don't know how the hell he got away with doing that, making carburetors that look like Holleys. But maybe the patent was over with. But this carburetor supposedly is rated to like 7 pounds, no problem. But most people, the experts say, to use, they really work best with 5 pounds. Holley's kind of exaggerating, or Demon is kind of exaggerating what they can really handle. And like, I think the circle track racers also they use that fuel pressure regulator, and they also use the phenolic resin spacer, which I'll be getting, I don't know, probably sometime next week, and I'll be putting that sucker on. And the phenolic resin spacer, that should be on every single car that has a carburetor, whether you need it or not, because even if the car runs good, it's going to be slightly better. You're going to get, I don't exaggerate, sometimes they say up to 25 horsepower, maybe it's like 3 horsepower, but it's good to keep the fuel cooler in the bowl. And it's actually good to have a cold air intake too, which is something else. So, all these little bullshit things make a big difference. Actually, when I was doing tune-ups back in the 70s, which was mainly on 60s cars, in mid-70s when I was going to school. I did more stuff than the mechanics did. They didn't check all this stuff with, like, the vacuum diaphragm on the choke itself. They wouldn't check. They might check the vacuum advance on the distributor, but they wouldn't check, if the weights are working, or if distributor shaft's got wobble, or it's got end play and the bushing, and they didn't lube. Just half the time they didn't even lube the points and even set the timing. I would do all that stuff, plus even go into the mechanical voltage regulator and set the regulator to so it's exactly correct, and clean the points on the regulator, which just had like a little metal box with 2 screws on it. It comes off and you see there's a couple points. Actually, I like those regulators better than the stupid ass electronic ones, and I might put one on my Harley if that electronic regulator ever takes a crap again. You could put an old Ford Motorcraft regulator on a Harley and place it at $100 freaking electronic gizmo. Just stupid, to tell you the truth. I don't like electronics. I really don't. So, anyway, that's a wrap. I don't know if this is going to fix it, but that's a very good thing to put on your car if you got a carburetor. And it's a very good thing, especially on a carbureted 4x4 that you're going to use off-road. And again, I like the mechanical fuel pump. I don't want to run just an electric fuel pump. No way in hell. Especially one in the gas tank. I have pulled them out of gas tanks before and dropped gas tanks and done them into modern cars. I just think that's stupid. But having an electric fuel pump that's in line, that's way back near the tank, that's not in the tank, but near the tank, way in the back, and having it mechanical, I don't think that's a bad idea, because then you got a backup. Say your mechanical pump breaks, you can still get home with the electric. Say you got a problem where you got air in the lines, you can flip on the electric and get the, push it through and prime the mechanical pump. Say the car was sitting a few weeks and it's all dry in there, in the gas, and you don't want it in your battery, you're not sure if it'll start up. Hit your electric fuel pump switch, fill the bowl up in the carburetor with gas with the electric fuel pump, and you start the car right up. So I don't mind it as a backup. So, and it might help with the hot weather starting too, because if you got, it might push through where there's air in the lines. Get it from way back where the gas tank is and push it all the way through and get, clean fuel, pure fuel pumped into the mechanical pump. And it probably would start a lot faster. So, you wouldn't need to run it all the time. But then if you have that, even if it's a low pressure electric fuel pump, usually they're about 10-12 pounds. You want to have something like this that brings it down to 5 pounds. So this thing's got several different uses for it. If you're using it with a low pressure electric fuel pump, you're using it off-road. The carb is not even right. The carb runs best on 5 pounds versus the 9 pounds or whatever the mechanical fuel pump's putting out when it's brand new. And this might help it with the hot weather issue too, because there could be more pressure in this line past the mechanical fuel pumps standard pressure because of the heat, and maybe it's 12-13 pounds because of the heat, and then this brings it down to 5, and that doesn't cause fuel to push past the needle valve and flood the engine, or make it get too much fuel while you're going in stop and go traffic. And so it is worth it. And I've had that on my Suzuki for years. That thing, I had it back. I put one on there more than 10 years ago, back when I had the Weber, way before I put the Toyota carburetor on it. And they seem to be very reliable. You know why they're reliable? Because it's not electronic. It's just a freaking thing. You spin this, you push it down, you turn it, and it locks in place, and it's set on 5 pounds. There's no computer chips in this stupid thing. It's going to keep working. Yeah, another little dumb tip. When you're tightening down these clamps, I always like spraying a little lube on them because, you know, they're I don't know, I think they're probably made in China. They just kind of like, you think they're tight and they go, they don't, you know, they're not tight. Also, you want to have them tightened down closer to where the barb is, so it's a better seal, you know, that little barb that's on the end here. Look right there. When you put the hose over it, you want to have it a little towards, not on that, but right just inside the barb. And another thing is, I like tightening them down. This thing is good for getting at, see, it's got a spring like that. Say you got some weird position that you're trying to tighten down a clamp. I mean, these are real easy to get at, but say you're getting way down in there and you can't, you know, with this spring, this is a 1/4 inch drive with a spring on it, right? I don't know, this thing's kind of stuck on here. Yeah, it's you know, it's good so the thing doesn't fall off. You know, it's got the little ball, and I like using these because like sometimes you're trying to. These were easy to put on because they're right here, you know. But I mean, if you're, what I'm saying is, you know, if you're in a funny position, I like using these because you can get them tightened up properly. And having this little spring thing, I had this thing for a million years, man. It's great. So I use that, you know, with my Armstrong 1/4 inch drive. See? Little bullshit like that makes a difference in how a little attention to detail makes things better, right? That's what it does.